It's me, Vera, here to remind you that this is an adult podcast. That means we're going to deal with tough topics. Take a break if you need it, and be kind to yourself, because we sure won't be.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition podcast, Stitch of Fate. As always, I am your storyteller, Mike Martin, joined by two of my lovely players today, Bub and Dot. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a while since we've sat down.
Yeah, it has.
It really has been. Far too long, I dare say.
I would... Yeah, it's been... actually, it's been...
I blame us, Mathis. I blame us.
I would say I played some Vampire last week, but I don't know if what last week was Vampire. Let's be honest. The Mark one shot, there was approximately 0 actual dice rolled that whole session. It was just chaos in the best way. If you haven't seen that episode, everybody, please go and check it out. But today, we are recording the final one shot of our 4 players. This is for Duke, a flashback into Duke's past, with obviously a special guest in Dot, who will be making a appearance later on as not Vera. I'm just kidding. It'll be Vera. If you were just not Vera, it would be funny. But thank you guys over on Patreon. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to do these. And a big thank you because we now officially have announced the start of Season 3. Episode 1, Season 3 will be dropping on November 5th. So after a bit of a hiatus and a crazy summer for literally all of us, we are finally coming back to the table to continue the story of Stitch of Fate. We're really excited where it's going to go. I think everybody's really eager to get back at the table and to kill Larson. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's
it's the only reason everybody's still listening. They're just waiting for it.
yeah, everyone just wants to murder Larson, and they just that's why he can never die.
Perpetual antagonist
forever, because then we'll lose our listenership. Yeah, exactly. But no Larson today. Larson will not be making a guest appearance on today's episode. Today's episode is all about Duke, and the year that will be taking place is the early 2000s, somewhere around 04, 05. But without further ado, I will tease you no longer. We'll bring it in, rein it in, and see what Duke is up to. I imagine as the scene opens, and the night sky greets our eyes, and we see the vast New York City skyline with bustling cars, honking horns, and the like, and countless apartment buildings stretching across the vast horizon. When the screen fades out and fades into a random apartment, correct me if I'm wrong, this is perhaps just a weird hunch, but I imagine we see Duke in his office, as Duke will describe here momentarily. But for some reason in my mind, he has Frasier on the TV.
Definitely something akin to that. He seeks normality.
I don't know what it is. Like as the scene was coming alive in my mind, all I heard in your apartment was the distant laugh track. Maybe it's because of what Dot did previously, but a laugh track, and then Frasier walking on screen. Frasier just seems like a Duke show.
Yeah, kind of in its own little way. It's at least off-putting from his norm and natural. That it's almost inviting. Yeah.
Sure. But as we take a look, as the camera pans in to this New York apartment, it isn't large, not particularly small, but almost a forgettable one. One of the many honeycombed across the buildings here in New York. And in it, the busy little worker bee known as Duke. But I'm going to hand the description off to you because we find Duke in these early 2000s taken by something. Like a muse taken its artist. Duke seems lost in his own paperwork as he sits at a desk. But what lies before Duke as the camera actually tilts down and sees him? And does he look much different in 2004 than he now does in 2021?
I think Duke has probably come into his own when it comes to attire. So it's a lot more of that like straight like Dockers, probably a button up, rolled all the way down as per normal. He looks very controlled on the surface, but a fever definitely drums within him. And you can tell that by his surroundings. Whereas in season 2, you're used to seeing the clean and pristine, everything has a place desk. Here it looks a lot less like that. It almost looks like its own crime scene, I would say. Sure, it's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, almost like a studio. The bathroom is rarely ever used whatsoever, but the small cot in the corner, the blacked out windows, and the wildly thrown about papers and conspiracy boards built up to his level of incoherent perfection. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to many people, but to Duke, it is controlled chaos.
And as the camera draws itself further in, lying itself aside Duke's shoulder and looking down to what he's looking at his desk, we see him holding 2 separate pieces of paper, photos really. The first in his left hand is one that is familiar to any who saw Duke's first one-shot. Lots of, a picture taken of Vera's crime scene. The very first one Duke had ever stumbled into, all those years ago. And in his right hand, a picture from mere nights ago of a crime scene that, on its surface, to those who generally look at it, may not really match up with the one on your left. But there are certain things that Duke looks at that he connects the dots. The way the blood is spattered across the wall in a very particular manner. The way the death occurs and there's no body left behind every time. Things that, as Duke has put them together over the course of now decades, 3 decades, things that match, that fall across the spectrum of 10 to 20 crimes. You're certain the person who did the one on the left is the one who committed the crime on the right. And if your hunch is correct, it's that Toreador. Out of curiosity, does Duke, as he's looking through these papers and holding these pictures, does he seem visibly, not shaken, perhaps? Is there more energy to his movement, or is he as calm and stoic as he always is, even in the midst of his multiple decades-long hunt for this person?
Still. It's water tension top still. You can't tell there's... If you didn't know that he was an unliving creature, you would assume that this was almost picturesque, a painting, waiting for any sort of disruption.
And as the camera catches both those crime photos and then slowly turns its way up to catch the profile of Duke unerringly and stoically staring at the files and pictures before him, the camera slides back a little bit as our vision goes to the corner of the room, and we watch as hours pass. Duke sits at the couch, fiddling with papers, and then, for another moment, he's standing with his arms behind his back, near a wall, looking at what, as he described, a conspiracy board, drawing a single finger from one to another. And then hours pass, and we see him over in the kitchen, sitting in a chair, seemingly just thinking, and then back to the couch, and so on. Over the course of those 4 hours, Duke, you've, as I said, become certain, but your thought process is interrupted by a light knock at your front door.
You slowly see the hands descend to the side, placing down whatever documents he seems to be holding at the time, stand and almost kind of like brush off his chest. Like there might be some sort of like dust, or it's just a habit, right, from his living formative years, and arises to the door, answering, knowing only who it is because only one person ever comes.
You slide the chain lock on the inside unlocked, and the deadbolt snaps open, and as you turn the handle and pull the door, there, standing in his casual attire, is Luther. Much older than the last time the audience has seen this particular Luther, the father of the son that you see in the main series. Last we saw him, he was but a beat cop, somebody that Duke ran across and serendipitously seemed to find a value and use for. But now, 30 years into his career, the gray hair through his beard is almost the dominant color. He keeps his hair extremely short, as his receding hairline now would not look very attractive nor domineering for anybody in his position. He keeps himself bald, and he's put on a good 15 to 20 pounds over the course of those years. There he sits with a manila envelope tucked under his shoulder, and his back is facing the door as he's just looking down the stairwell that he came up. As the doorknob clicks and we hear the small squeak of the apartment door being pulled open, his attention is pulled as he looks over his shoulder. The two of you meet eyes, and he just kind of gives you a very subtle nod and turns to presumably be let in.
I step out of the way.
He steps in wordlessly as Duke shuts the door behind him, and I imagine you lock it behind him as
Yes.
well. He looks to the kitchen, and sees that, as always, though you are not particularly one to take in such things, you're making him a coffee, as he appreciates. He walks over to the kitchen and plops down the manila envelope very loudly on the small kitchen table, and he just makes his way over to the cupboard where one single mug sits. He reaches in and pulls it out, and it's stained on the inside. As the camera comes closer to Luther, we can see yellow stains, a well-used mug. As he slides it next to the coffee pot where it finishes its last few drips, he pulls it and pours himself a big, tall glass of hot black coffee. He pulls it, takes a sip, doesn't seem to acknowledge how hot it is, and probably burned away those nerve endings years ago. As he makes his way to that small kitchen table, slides the coffee cup, pulls out a chair, and with a creak, plops down and lets out a huge sigh. Long day. Sorry, I'm a little later than expected. You can take a seat, and he gestures to the chair.
Yes, I think I'll join you, Luther.
He just kind of waits for you to make your way over and sit down, and we watch as Duke methodically and slowly makes his way over, pulls out the chair, sits with his knees together, pulls the chair in underneath him, and places his hands, fingers crossed, calmly in front of the table. Or on the table, rather. Luther shoves the manila envelope under your arms, or under your wrists, and he just makes a gesture as he takes another sip. That's the shit you were looking for. ID on the past. He kind of just takes a sigh, thinks for a minute. 6 victims over the past 5 years. It's the best I could get you.
It should be more than enough for me to work with.
The criteria you're looking for was fucking hard to find. You're looking for victims that match certain blood spatter patterns and shit. That's just not my area of expertise, so if any one of them are not necessarily correct, I apologize ahead of time.
I should be able to work with what is here. Thank you, Luther. You're always very handy.
He nods, continuing to sip his coffee, pulling it close to his chest, kind of letting the warmth sink in through his clothes. He kind of nods again, and then doesn't really meet his eyes. His eyes go from your face down to the manila envelope. You gonna tell me anything about this person you've been hunting, or are you just gonna keep it to yourself now?
You can probably determine from this point that I've been building a profile upon them for a while. I'm sure you can see that my estate, if you will, is a bit out of control.
He does take a moment to let his gaze kind of cast about the studio apartment, taking it all in, but nothing really shakes him at this point, and he just shrugs, and he's like, you haven't gotten in my way over the past 30 years, and I haven't gotten in yours. I'm not going to question your methods at this point. The only thing I really have a concern with, if you don't mind me laying my cards on the table, most of the time when we're dealing with killers, you're helping me find them. Roles seem to be a bit of a reverse situation this time around, and I'm curious why you don't want the cops taking care of this particular one.
Well, Luther, a long time ago, I was told that sometimes it is apt to recognize when you should not ask questions that you do not want answers to. But know that I am trying to eliminate some threats from your future. Similarly, some addled passions of my own. This keeps me busy, preoccupied, and they have my complete and unlimited focus.
He nods at that, swallowing your words, and he's like, listen, I learned to swallow my paranoia about you a long time ago. It's not that I'm worried about you doing something that's gonna cause me more problems. It's just very rare, or should I say, I've never seen you like this. He looks around the apartment. Yeah.
Well,
only very few that I've put away seem to have obsession levels to this degree. So, yeah, you piqued my curiosity a
to
little.
say that it's a fascination would be a bit of an understatement. You know that I do like my puzzles, Luther.
And what do you plan on doing when you find this person?
That is yet to be determined. I wish to know the cause of their actions first. Everything is a matter of being provoked. Every situation. This is simply a reaction to whatever is in their environment that is provoking them to do so. Is this person redeemable? probably not. You know that once you're so far gone, there's not much you can do. And I, from my own experiences, have realized that despite the level of help and assistance you may gain and garner, sometimes it is simply not enough. We all find our own way, though. This is why they're very interesting to me, Luther. I want to figure out why they are as enigmatic as they actually are. A puzzle.
He goes to speak and takes that sharp breath, but cuts himself off as he brings the mug of coffee to his lips, taking a large couple of swigs before he places it back down on the table. It's still steaming out of the mug. He looks to you, breaks his eyes, and looks around. There's a recent crime scene. One that, as far as I can tell, doesn't really match much, but there's a few similarities between the stuff you had me looking for and this particular one. Been cordoned off. Not really going to be putting in some work tomorrow on it, but if you want to take a look at it prior, I can give you the location.
I will.
But I need something in return.
Always.
I've been pushing for that. I've been aiming for Sergeant for a little while. Man above me has not moved. In my opinion, he's doing a worse job than I could do. He's got a couple favorite officers. They slip by, they slip through the cracks, even if they do a piss poor job, and I just think New York could do better. I don't know where I heard it, but there are rumors that he's, skimming some money off the police officers' accounts. Docking some hours off the computers, making sure those who don't get overtime don't necessarily get their overtime, you know. Small transgressions that if we could prove were happening over the course of years, would probably get him to either retire early or get him removed entirely. Now, I don't have that kind of evidence. I don't have that kind of material on me, but I can give you my login. You can go through the computers for me, maybe check the numbers, double check to make sure my suspicions are correct.
That should be easy enough. While I'm not as experienced with much of the current technology, I suppose that it shouldn't be too difficult to learn, especially if I can arrange it in some sort of paper format. I find it I am most comfortable when I can draw pen to paper.
Yeah, there are books you'll be going through. I'm not asking you to like hack a system or nothing. I don't even know how to do that, but I can get you logged into the proper I'm looking for the word. They don't use those time cards no more. They make us clock into computers and shit, so I can get you logged into that and give you my passcode and stuff, and I may or may not have taken or stumbled across the sergeant's login as well, so.
Then you should have more than enough for me to discover what I need to. If it's not nearly enough, I can always delve a bit more into his personal life.
He actually takes a moment and maybe 10, 20 years ago, he would have been hesitant, but he just simply shrugs and nods. Whatever you gotta do. He's in the way and he's causing more problems. The city could be in better position if he was not there.
I take a moment I think Duke takes a moment to really sort of discern the seriousness of the situation, the way that Luther is providing this. Is it almost, does it seem like he might be like saying that this could be more than a retire situation, an untimely accident might be welcomed?
If that's how you think Duke would interpret it, you're welcome to make a roll.
I would like to at least see what he might be meaning here.
Yeah.
With awareness +1, I got 2 successes.
You don't think he means kill him. You think he means if he's not going to retire, get his ass fired.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Though it makes sense that Duke for a moment might take that option into consideration, even for the briefest of moments. But as Duke looks and examines Luther's face, you realize he's not. While he's certainly morally gray, he's not that kind of guy.
Understood, Luther. This shouldn't be an issue. I do happen to know where most of the detectives at your office seems to live, for a variety of reasons. I like to know who is corrupted and who is not.
He reaches over to the manila envelope, pulls a pen out of his front pocket, and quickly scratches down an address onto it and slides it over. There should only be 1 or 2 officers there tonight watching the place over, but most of the evidence should still be there.
Certainly.
There's another young kid. 19. Drug addict as far as I could tell. But as always, much like the other ones, there wasn't really much of a body left.
More ash than not.
Yeah. Though. And he kind of just looks, I'm the only one who even has any idea.
Thank you, Luther. That's quite informative. And then about these, the documents in this envelope, this, you said was the locations, and I begin like opening up this envelope, the dossier, if you will.
Yeah, and as you pull the elastic band off of it and open up the manila envelope, you see photos of varying different crime scenes, particularly though that of the blood spatter on those crime scenes. They all have that arcing motion, that long stretch across the walls, and there's always a large puddle of blood where they believe the body was being tortured, as they describe it.
Luther, then I have to ask you, as a detective, slowly rising through time and seeing the crime scenes that you've seen, if you had an opportunity to profile a criminal based off of the scenes, what would you put into mind? What does this look like to you?
Serial killer?
A serial killer.
Falls into the profile. Someone who enjoys their job. Someone we call a process killer. You know what that means?
I have my own ideals, yes.
Yeah, process killers. They're the ones that thoroughly enjoy, well, the process of the killing. Other serial killers fall under product killer. They don't really enjoy the process. They just want the body, so on and so forth. This one seems to enjoy it, whoever this person is, and whatever they do with the body after. If there is one, and he looks to you, I don't know.
And through your crime assessment, would you say that this is organized or disorganized, or a mix of both?
To an uneducated eye, I'd say most people would find this as unorganized, maybe copycat killings and so on, but with the subtle consistencies that only you have made me enlightened to. He shrugs. Organized.
And something that we've seen in a system of serial killings, that what I've noticed is that this seems to be lacking an extreme sense of sexual acts. Maybe performance, but not sexual acts.
He looks to you and just kind of lets that sink in before he's like, I don't even know how you'd be able to tell such a thing.
Most of the way that the clothes remain and lie. As the ash seems to steeple down to the ground, the clothes remain in position. They don't seem to burn away.
He actually does, you see his tongue run across the front of his teeth with his lips closed, and he pops his lips open. Yeah, that actually makes sense. Yeah, that doesn't fit necessarily, though there were a few. Ever heard of Eddie Gein?
Familiar with Edward, yes.
Yeah, not much of a horny dude, but fucking weird. Wouldn't be the first time Monster does things, so not necessarily for sexual purposes, but he points and waggles a finger. For the most part, yeah, you're right.
We're all monsters, Luther. Some of us are just larger monsters than others. Sometimes you just have to know how to rein them in, organize them so that they can stop being so wild or rabid.
Some of us take that term and are the literal incarnation of it. And he takes a sip of coffee.
Do I sense sarcasm, Luther?
He looks to himself. The past 30 years haven't treated me nearly as good as they've treated you, Duke.
What can I say? I have a healthy regimen of vitamins and exercise. Look at my figure. This is pristine, peak male performance, Luther.
Are you telling a joke?
I'm trying. This is very hard for me. I don't really get much social interaction.
It's probably for the best. Wouldn't want anybody getting a little creeped out by it or anything.
I'll take a look at this site. Tonight, even. I need to break away from this place. Something about strained eyes, needing to find a different muse.
You mind if I sit here and finish the coffee first?
Please. Shouldn't be a problem. I never have visitors, so it's not as if anyone may break in, not that they'll find anything worth stealing anyway. However, if someone does break in and there is a sudden report to the office at this location, then understand what you may have to do.
He kind of just sips his coffee. Are you going to leave him alone in the apartment?
Yes.
Okay. As you make your way out, as you're about to kind of make your way out the front door, and you just hear in the background a fumbling for the remote. He's like, I fucking hate Frasier. And you just hear a couple clicks, and you hear Seinfeld start up. And as the door opens, you hear Seinfeld's music behind, and it shuts. And you make your way out to the city. And this particular location is not all that far from your apartment in terms of walking distance. You're looking at about an hour's walk if you were to just go by foot. Does Duke have any rush to get there? Does he want to get in a cab? I'm curious, like, how patient is Duke right now? How eager is he to get to this crime scene?
Well, what's done is done, right? The victim at this point has probably already ashed, and the composition at this point, or the decomposition, if you will, has already set in. So I don't think it's a matter of being swift about it. I think it's just putting some details together.
Yep. Yeah, you're just trying to piece together the last pieces of the puzzle, trying to figure out where this person is likely operating.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're not in a rush, I imagine you walk. It's a brisk evening with somewhere around 60 to 65 degree weather with a cool breeze. The cars are still loading the streets and people are pushing their way past you, shoulders bumping in, but you're well fed. You're not hungry in the terms of that, beyond that one dot that you normally would be, and your mind is singularly focused. Soon, though, the what's the word I'm looking for? The homogenized area that you're in of apartment building after apartment building after apartment building slowly gives way to, much like a lot of the other crime scenes that you've been recently visiting, the poorer parts of the city with rundown buildings, cars left out in the streets with tires missing, busted out windows and boarded up doors of abandoned areas. And for the most part, you're ignored. Duke has this aura about him that people kind of move and don't really tend to try and engage with him even while he's out in public. And you're actually led to a small one-story building that at one point was a store. It has those big glass windows up front, but whatever was stuck or written on it for the storefront is completely taken off. Graffiti has almost completely covered it entirely, and the front door itself is busted off its hinges, leaning up against the door frame with like wood, just like it looks like the door itself had been kicked or bashed off the front door. There's police tape around the entire entrance of the building, and you can see from about a block back, there's two officers sitting out front chatting with one another.
I'd like to go to the rear side of the building. The first thing that I probably do in most of these situations, given the patterns, is I look for an entrance that might not be discerned as a natural entrance by a formative police officer's eyes.
Absolutely. As you look around, the first thing Duke takes note as he scours the outside of this building, this one-story building, is that there's varying different entrances that whoever wanted to get into here could have. Nearly every window is busted out in some way. The windows on the side, the windows that lead to the back storage room. The back door itself is not busted off its hinges, but the door handle is missing. There's just a circular hole where the door handle would be that you could peer inside from. So nearly every entrance is a possible entrance. And for that, it doesn't really help Duke all that much.
Okay.
There's nothing that sticks out as like a secret entrance.
Sure. Just I'm looking to make sure that there might not be anything where there's like an aerial exit, essentially like a rooftop exit, that sort of thing.
Oh, okay, and you're looking for more of like a rooftop exit and such. No, there's no sunroof here. The roof of the building itself is a straight concrete slab. And peering on the inside and outside does not show any holes in the ceiling or anything like that.
Okay, then I wish to enter the establishment, probably from the rear side, if I can.
Yep. The cops are not paying much attention whatsoever. Can I just get a dex stealth check from you just to make sure you make minimal noise?
Yeah.
Ooh, baby. 3 successes. The cops continue to chatter on the outside, not at all paying attention to even the small knocking about of garbage as you quietly push the door inward and make your way inside. As you make your way in through the back door, you realize what you're greeted with is that at some point this was a general store. There's a few shelves left over, most of them leaning up against a wall or lying down on the ground. There's a thick layer of dirt that kind of cakes over everything, and a mixture of broken glass bottles and cardboard boxes and empty tin cans and empty spray painting cans. But the thing that also catches your eye that is not terribly surprising is the vast array of needles that seem to be kind of scattered throughout.
Sure.
The first floor itself, though, is clear. This is not where the crime took place. There's no blood spatter in the actual general vicinity. There's no giant pool of blood or any clothes left over. But there are stairs that lead down into what would be the storage/basement of this store that you can make your way down, which I imagine we see Duke, after quickly glancing through the store, slowly plod his way down the stairs.
Yes.
As he does so, becomes clear after the first 3 or 4 steps, and you turn your head to the left. This giant open room was a regular hangout of some sort of drug den. There's bottles. There's actually like a working lamp that is in the corner that is still lit for light, casting light on this room. There's a pile of clothes that's scattered very up against a nearby wall, where you can clearly see the blood patterns spewed across the wall right behind where the clothes would have been. And there's a giant puddle of blood dried up underneath the clothing itself. There's not much more down here beyond that, though. There's no table. There's no books, comic books, or anything other than that. There's just evidence of some drugs and a clear murder. And immediately for Duke, this is maybe a little frustrating. There's not an immediate leftover evidence from whoever done this to maybe point you in a particular direction. So we see Duke for a few moments, pacing, trying to figure things out. He took his files with him, the most important ones, and for a moment he opens them and he looks through the papers. Can I please get from you, Duke, an intelligence investigation roll? And yes, your specialty will apply here.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna rouse the blood too.
Oh my god. You crit.
8 successes.
8 successes? That's 8 successes. That's huge. You spend about 30 minutes. We watch as Duke stands in this open basement with a concrete floor covered in dirt, kicking around a few needles, and eventually just crossing his legs, sitting in the center of the room, gently placing the manila envelope in front of him, opening it, and spreading out the crime scenes, and looking at them while turning his head up and looking at the one he's presently in. And over the course of about, like I said, 30 minutes, he's trying to piece something together. Beyond the obvious, the clothes, the blood, the things that indicate clearly it's a kindred taking care of these, and clearly the targets are kindred or thin bloods to some degree. What else can we pin here? And as you are looking at the crime scenes, you realize there is something that Luther not necessarily picked out, but with this other crime scene, you realize over the past 5 years, and only the past 5 years, this particular person's crimes have been happening within a very overall small radius within New York. Initially, that wasn't the case. When you first picked up on her scent, she was much more widespread. Her crimes were vastly cast across the city. But as the years have gone on, you realize her zone of effect, or her zone of targets, has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And these past few, over, like I said, the past 5 years, have been more or less centrally radiated within 1 or 2 boroughs. You're able to pin it down, more or less, to that she's likely, if she's operating within this small area, she's likely residing somewhere within this small area. And the more Duke looks around, he starts pulling out finances in his own personal small notebook, that he keeps in his back pocket where he keeps track of local businesses, how much income they're taking in, because it's important for a venture to understand where money is flowing throughout the city. It is the bloodline, the blood life of the city itself. You realize within those 5 years, there's also been the only thing that's ever opened in terms of notable businesses, things that are bringing in a decent amount of money other than your usual restaurants in New York that come and go and stores that come and go, is a local club. 5 years ago, recently opened. However, the more as you dig in, as you look over your notes, you realize you never got an owner's name for this club. Something that you dug in for a little bit when it first showed up, got distracted, didn't really matter, and you never really dug any further. But now, out of all as you flip through your businesses, this club, this location, which sits pretty central into this couple block area, or this couple borough area, you don't know who owns it. And it's been around for as long as these murders have been taking place in this local area.
Now that is different and interesting. Why, though?
Would the club, my apologies, I'm going to have to ask Vera here. Would the club have a name? Because it wouldn't be the Succubus Club at this point,
That's
not yet.
true. And it's the 2000s.
It's early 2000s, you're not in your drug den anymore. It is the property that will become the Succubus Club.
It's called Swan Lake.
Oh, wow, okay. As Duke is looking over the notes and you realize this place is called Swan Lake. With 8 successes in your investigation, it's like a light bulb goes off. Yeah, no, of course the killings aren't sexual. The blood spatters aren't someone with a raging arm or slicing and casting. If you step back for a moment and you look at it as you initially had seen it, that first crime scene that you found, the dancing. Now, yeah, that makes more sense. It all starting to come together in Duke's mind. And she's hiding in plain sight, naming a club after her own, perhaps, hobbies or fascinations. And she is a Toreador, Duke tells himself. One of the things that doesn't seem to make sense. Now, it's starting to all come together.
That is very interesting. Why would she be killing you, friends? He kind of like thumbs the pages out in front of him, these photos. Let's look at the area. You're in a...
Knowing, yeah, make me another wits investigation.
Yeah. Wits or intelligence?
Intelligence, sorry, my bad.
Yep, no problem.
5 successes, which is a crazy amount of successes still. He's sitting there thinking for a minute, why? And there's one thing that Duke doesn't really know. There's no way to know that these are all thin bloods. They're kindred, certainly. They're dusting afterward, you know that much. But there's no way to know if they're full-blooded kindred or not. And so you take a step back. Now the paper is laid out on the floor. We see Duke rise to his feet and slowly pace back and forth as his hands interlocked behind his back, speaking to himself, trying to think, what is the running theme here? How? Why? And as you look at the location, realize it's starting, the way it's contracting into this area, it does dawn on you. There were, while the Sabbat were running around and running New York, a whole lot more thin bloods. And as the years went on, the Camarilla took over, Calabros became prince. Their numbers were dwindling. They became centrally located in one area because Calabros didn't need all these half-bloods risking the masquerade breaching. And as you step back and you think about it, you realize that where we're at now is the location that Calabros and the Camarilla is seeking to keep most of the thin bloods, sort of corralled in a weird way in a particular part of the city where they can all easily be tracked. You're not one to fiddle with Camarilla politics all that much beyond dealing with what's necessary and when your sire needs you and dealing with Elysium. So thinking about the movements of the prince and how they're keeping certain things in line didn't really matter. Not until this very moment where it's all starting to come together. Now the grand picture is starting to come into play for Duke. Whoever is hunting these creatures, while you have no way of being 100% certain, Duke is very, very sure that they're probably all thin bloods.
I think Duke would probably say, and nobody would miss you. Nobody would bat an eye at your removal. Clean. Unfortunate for you. Interesting for me. Another piece. Let's find out what this Swan Lake is.
As Duke puts his papers together, closes up the manila folders, sliding that elastic band back around it, and quietly making his way up the stairs quickly and back onto the streets, as the other officers we see behind Duke as he walks away are still chatting with one another, none the wiser than anybody had ever walked into the house and left. Duke makes his way to this newfound club. From where you're at, it's maybe 30, 45-minute walk. Maybe, I don't know, it's probably like an hour and a half walk from where you're at. But you take that time. I imagine during that time, thoughts race through your mind. It's like puzzle pieces being tried into different places, pulled out and replaced, desperately trying to put that picture together before you get there. And while you're never able to fully put it together, not quite yet, in Duke's mind, it's 90% complete. In any other case, if you were still mortal, enough for you to act. But eventually, the club does come into view. And at this particular point in this club's life, it's only a single story. Very little construction has been on it, but the building itself looks very new, only a few years old. And it stands out amongst the buildings around it. It's better kept, better taken care of. Clearly a ton of money is poured into it, but unlike how the venture would go about things, the area around it seems entirely neglected, like a beacon in the middle of a poor part of town. There's no line to get in, but it certainly sounds busy.
I'm certain that this is the place. This feels right. With the music,
It would have been I'm assuming there's like a neon sign out there for Vera. Would you have neon signed your club for it to say the name? Or would Vera... Yeah, so yeah, as you walk in, it's just... What is it? Is it cursive? Vera, what does the sign for this first club look like?
It's probably neon. And I imagine that there's a simple kind of pictograph version of a swan that makes the S on the swan piece, and then underneath it says, maybe lake. Like swan's very cursive, but lake is a sans serif font. It's very hip and new and modern and kind of cool. So you get the juxtaposition there.
So our shot starts with looking out at that sign. The building is in our view, and we see that gorgeous Swan Lake. You said Swan Lake? Sorry, my brain died. Yep, Swan Lake sign just plastered up against this. Like I said, this building's no more than 5 or so years old. It gives this great pink glow, and as the camera swings around and sees the street, we actually just get a close-up of Duke's face, cast in that pink glow. Quietly looking at it through his glasses, we can see the reflection blurred a little bit of the neon sign, and the only audio we hear behind is the low thumping of the music coming from the club that we cannot see right now. There's probably a moment before the camera is completely blocked as Duke takes one step forward and passes through the camera, and as he walks through, we catch the back of his head now as he walks across the street toward the front door, where a bouncer with his arms crossed sits there, looks at you with an arm raised, with an eyebrow raised. To you, Duke, this guy's probably in his mid-20s. He's got that tank top on with the jeans and just dressed as a typical bouncer. And he's got tattoos all down the left arm. He's got a koi jumping out of water with like a sun and moon up by his shoulder, fully colored. And it's the first thing that your eye is drawn to before you look up to him, and he looks to you with his head cocked. You getting in?
I will instinctively reach for my wallet and pull out a handful of cash, a couple of 20s.
How much?
We'll say $40.
$40? Is there a cost to enter the club at this particular point? Because when we see the Succubus Club, it's a line, it's a VIP, there's like names on a list. At this point, though, right, that's what I'm saying. Is it just like money and you're in?
There's probably not even a door charge. Duke just doesn't know it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the bouncer ain't gonna say shit. Yeah. So you pull out 40, and the bouncer. Well, I'm gonna make a roll to see if he's good at being able to hide the fact that he's surprised that you just handed him cash. You can make me a wits awareness, please, just to see if you pick up on it, because you do not roll very much.
Sure. I assume that there's probably not a door charge, but instinctively he's doing it just to kind of get that pass.
Okay, cool.
4 successes.
Yeah, you can tell he's
6
immediately
successes.
surprised. You hand him 40 and he looks down and looks up to you and is like, and he swallows and you hear the paper, the bills crumple in his hand and he shoves it in his pocket and he just steps out of the way. Right on in, sir. Enjoy your time here at Swan Lake.
I step inside.
As you walk by and the camera lingers with the bouncer as he pulls out the 40 wad that you just gave him. You see him pull out his wallet. He pops it open. He's only got a $1 bill in there as he shoves the 40 in there. And he's like, and he just seems very pleased with himself. But then the camera catches back up with Duke just as he steps through the door. And you're greeted with not the Succubus Club. A very basic club layout, I imagine. You've got your open dance floor where people are mingling, an open bar where there's maybe for now, because it's not super busy, only one bartender dealing with the guests around. There's a VIP room, but it's behind the dance room, and it's not like a level above. It's just
I imagine
locked
the
in a
second
private
and third
room,
floors are completely
further back.
unfinished. That they've put like a false ceiling or something.
Oh yeah, there's probably construction only just starting on the second floor. Like it's still very early in its career here. And like I said, there's not like 200 people in here. There's like 75 people in here. Still, again, busy for at this particular point, like a Thursday night, especially for where this club is in town. But just for those who are listening, the stark contrast between where the club will eventually end up. And as Duke steps in, Duke, you realize, because you're an observant man, you stick out like a sore thumb. Everybody in here is dressed kind of just relaxed and in their kind of club attire and having a good time, a lot of drunk people. And there stands Duke, 6'5" or whatever tall you are, with a straight white button-down shirt and his khakis and dress shoes with his glasses and his gelled hair. And he stands at the foot of the dance floor, kind of, I imagine, gazing over everybody. Where would Duke go as soon as he stepped into the club?
He'll scan the area and try to immediately find a spot at the bar.
It doesn't take long. You can easily find a spot at the bar. And there's a few open seats, and you're able to saddle up again onto one as a seat sinks a little bit under your tall figure. And as you sit, the bartender quickly makes his way over. How you doing, sir? What can I get for you?
Hi.
You look like a cosmopolitan man to me. And he turns around.
Thank you. That's actually pretty close. I'll take one of those, yes.
He doesn't turn around. You just see him quickly nod, and he quickly throws together a drink, shakes things up, pours it into a glass, and slides it up your way. Open a tab, or you're just paying for the one and
I'll
done?
just pay for this one.
Okay, and he writes up a receipt and slides it your way.
I'll just put another
Pay when ready.
20 on the bar. I'm curious. I'm new to the area. I was looking for a regular hangout. I just got off of work myself, and well, this seems like a rather nice place. It's a little darker around the edges, but
he looks at the 20 and slides the bill back and starts making change.
no,
for
please,
you
it's all
out of it.
yours.
Well, wow, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, Swan Lake's a kind of a, we've only been around for a few years now, but we've certainly grown in our any gestures to the construction, making enough money where we can expand a bit. Things are looking good here, so I only imagine it's going to get better. You found a good place.
Is this the typical attire, music, and hangout style?
Yeah, well, unless you come by one of her special nights, but those don't happen too often, and they're not really scheduled.
Her special nights?
Yeah, owner of the establishment.
I'm listening. You've piqued my interest.
Vera, would you give your employees at this point your actual name, or would you have given them a fake name as to who you are?
Vera Volkov is her masked name, so she would be able to use it publicly. So I imagine they may call her boss,
cool.
Right? But yeah. Yes.
Yeah. If somebody's asking like who owns it, yeah, okay, cool.
Established Vera Volkov owns the club.
Yeah. You have Vera. Vera is she runs this place. She bought the place out when this place opened up. Interesting.
You said it's been here for a few years now.
Yeah, something like 4 or something like that. I started a little bit after this place opened. I wasn't around right away.
Interesting. Thank you.
I don't mean to be rude, but if you don't mind me saying, you don't seem like the type that would want to find a place like this to hang out here.
Sometimes you have to get out of your own element. I I work inside my head
As
a
my
lot.
girlfriend always says when she brings me to those poetry slam meetings.
Oh, those can be a bit dry.
You telling me?
Sometimes you just have to cut a little rug, relax yourself. And again, I work inside of my head a lot. There's a lot of, I work psychologically. So this loosens the phrase a bit.
You're a therapist. That makes a lot more sense.
Yes. Yes, I am.
As those words fall from Duke's lips, the camera cuts. Music goes from loud in our face to muted behind a few doors. Vera. In the VIP room, as the club's been open for a few hours, you're doing your thing. You're probably doing some paperwork and the like. But John actually makes his way over to you. At this point, he's what, 60s, 70s?
Okay,
How
so
old is John at this point?
Yeah, he would be about. He'd still
2004.
be about 60-ish.
Yeah, all right. He's
Yeah.
approaching his elderly age, his late middle age. But John approaches you.
I was about to say,
not
maybe he doesn't
scooting
shuffle as
forward,
much.
but with an actual. Yeah, he doesn't shuffle. He's got a little limp in his right leg, but not much more than that. He can move rather quickly. And as he approaches, you feel a tap on your shoulder, Vera, from behind you. And as you spin around, there stands John in his regular attire. It's like, Miss Volkov, I apologize for interrupting. I just figure you should know there's somebody's arrived in the club, and I don't mean to be presumptuous, but he sticks out like a sore thumb. I don't know if he's one of... And he kind of just makes a gesture
Never
toward
have to
you.
apologize for taking me away from paperwork. I hate it. And she outs a very large cigar, face down in like a style, like a pile of probably bills and accounting paperwork. And she stands up and says, "Well, let's see this fellow."
And John just kind of nods, and as you stand up, he guides you to the door. And he just stops at the front, and he just gestures over to the bar. I imagine from here you can see the one that doesn't seem to be a frequent visitor of establishments like ours. And as you gaze over, there sits a very tall man in extremely business attire, sipping... yeah, that's a cosmopolitan. Having light chatter with Jake, the bartender.
Is he actually sipping it?
That's a good question. Bub,
Yes.
would Duke blush of life to drink the Cosmopolitan?
No.
Or would he simply sit there and play with
He would
it?
play with it.
So Vera, as he's pointed out, and you look beyond John's pointed gaze, you watch him play with the Cosmopolitan for a while. And you, quietly to yourself, just watch, waiting. 5 minutes go, and he does not ever seem to even care to take a sip. Plays with it constantly. That's about it.
When Vera finally puts that piece together that he's not actually sipping his Cosmopolitan. John, do our new guest a favor. Bring him back to my office if he's so inclined. He does look like a businessman.
I'll offer him the invite, but I'm not going to force him.
I don't think that you could.
He just kind of gives you like a pointed look, and Vera spins on her heels before the camera zooms through the crowd and meets its way back up with Duke. Duke, do you just have light conversation with Jake over the course of these few minutes while you get your Cosmopolitan? What does Duke do?
Duke is trying to think of a clever way that he can find some assertive control over the situation. He walked into somebody else's home at this point, and
another kindred of your assumption, they're in very way their domain.
So this is the tricky situation. He's playing outside of his field. It's a comfort zone that he typically likes to work inside of, so he's not really uncomfortable. I think he's a bit more on edge.
Sure, more aware, more. So can I get a wits awareness from you?
Yes, you can. Wits awareness. Submit.
My God, Jesus Christ, your rolls are out of control today, man. You rolled 3 10s. God damn. So 6 total successes. You're, like you said, Duke, while he's having this casual conversation with Jake, almost kind of like muscle memory, just keeping this man occupied, his eyes are constantly shifting. Duke looks over his shoulder amongst the dancing crowd, the drunken people sliding up against a wall, the people puking in a corner. When you notice, as you look around, there's this, around the edges of the wall, behind where the speakers are and away from where most of the lights are pointing, there's an older gentleman quietly weaving his way in your direction. He doesn't really look at you, save once, where you very quickly meet glances before he breaks his glance away. But as you keep peering over, he is getting closer and closer to you, but doing a very good job at staying out of the way of most people's attention.
I'll wait.
As you wait, your suspicions are confirmed as he pulls out of the dark shadows into the lighted area of the bar and places a gentle palm on your left shoulder.
I'll turn casually.
As you turn, his wrinkled hands curl back, and he sticks both of his hands in his pockets. He looks to you with his balding and bearded face. It's like, excuse me, sir. We realize, or should I say, the owner of the establishment has noticed that you are new to our fine club.
I am, yes.
And would be curious if you'd have any interest in perhaps meeting the one who put such an establishment in such a unique position in the city.
Tonight.
He takes a moment, kind of lets that question hang, and he's like, it is, after all, I believe, part of the rules to announce yourself when entering somebody else's property. And he gives you kind of a slightly tilted head. To you, obviously, reciting the laws of the Camarilla in a more subtle way.
Duke gives a very forced and fake smile.
You actually get an extremely forced and faked one in return from John.
Then please, lead me on to whomever the owner is.
He nods, makes a gesture for you to stand, and retraces the same steps he took to approach you. Vera, you're in the back room, probably back to the paperwork or pacing a little bit. Doesn't take long, though, whatever it is that you're doing, before the VIP doors swing open and in walks John, and shortly behind him, the tall individual sat at the bar of Swan Lake. John merely looks to Duke and then to Vera, and he says, Miss Vera Volkov. He takes a quick nod, and he hurries his way out, leaving the two of you in privacy.
I'll take 2 to 3 steps forward, and I'll give a tight and curt nod.
I imagine Vera meets you with similar, cordiality, and she picks up the cigar that's probably face down in the desk back up, knocks it off, and lights it again, and then sits down. And gestures to it, I imagine, a disheveled chair in the room for you to join her.
I think Duke will probably move up to the chair, but he won't actually sit down. He'll place his hands on the back of the seat itself. Stand a bit more relaxed.
As both characters are in this room, Vera, what does your VIP room look like at this particular juncture?
It's probably
in your
not
past?
much of a VIP room. It's probably just the only private room in the place other than where she lays her head and where John rests in the basement. And so it's probably got a disheveled desk full of unfiled paperwork, undone things. She is not a businesswoman. She probably sits in a leather chair. She may have 2 mismatched chairs in the room as well. And then there's boxes of things that either haven't been unpacked or files from the past that haven't been dealt with. But not very VIP. Maybe there's a small bar cart in the corner for Vera that has nothing but vodka and a small humidor on it.
And that's what Duke is greeted with. He doesn't sit. He simply stands by the chair as Vera relaxes with her new cigar, billowing smoke outward.
I'll wait for the proper acknowledgement at this point.
Well, I have been delightfully introduced to you. Do you have a name?
Certainly. You can call me Duke.
Duke. How very regal of you.
Some would say so.
Well, Duke, you are not my usual customer.
As I've come to notice, I'm a bit sore. as I've seen and have heard.
Oh, I just like to know what marketing scheme I've managed to work up to bring in clientele such as you.
I'd heard great things about this new establishment. I'm not new to the area.
Great.
But I'm new to this particular street.
Interesting. Well, Duke, I don't quite believe you. No one has good things to say about me or this place. But
I could probably think of a few things to say that might be, posited as a positive remark.
Well, shall I pour you a drink for you to thumb?
No, thank you. I am quite finished toying with the Cosmopolitan that rests on the bar downstairs. Jake is rather nice.
Yes. The ladies at least like to tip him well.
The doorman, on the other hand, is less inviting. I suppose that's his role in things. He garnered a healthy tip.
Well, then it seems he's come out on top tonight, too. What business do you have here, Duke?
I suppose I could say, honestly, that I was drawn to this place like a moth to a flame. I work around the city with a few people in the Camarilla. I model some of their personal finances for them in a way that is a bit more suitable to the general public.
I see. Well, you've made yourself known in 2 ways tonight. Fixing books and dropping the big C word.
Well, I suppose when your associate, potentially even ghoul, approaches me quoting The Masquerade, I figured it was only fitting.
He is not my ghoul. He works willingly. But
Good help is hard to find, I suppose.
that is probably the truest statement you've said since coming through the door. I imagine you're not here to give me financial advice.
No, none whatsoever. You simply asked who I was. I wanted to figure out exactly what this establishment was and who its owner might be. You piqued my interest, Miss Volkov.
You're not the first man who's told me that.
What is Vera wearing?
Well, this is the 80s. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well,
It's just 2000.
early
You're right. 2000s, what would she be wearing?
Peak
Oh,
millennial fashion.
The worst. I imagine, okay, she's probably still in leather or vinyl of some kind, but it's more like that horrid pleather suit that Britney Spears wears. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Like it's just it's
Yeah.
the same, but it's not really quite as classy. It's
So
not.
it's not
I
bright
imagine
red
it's not bright
either?
red. If it's red, it's gonna be like a deep red color.
Yeah.
But it's got that horrible button around the collar because everybody who wore 2000s wore chokers, and it's just not quite as nice because I also imagine she can't afford.
I completely forgot to describe the sea of
I
frosted
literally
tips in the club.
said in chat that I imagine everybody here is dressed like NSYNC.
Oh yeah. Frosted tips
Yeah.
as far as the eye can see.
I
dude.
imagine she also maybe doesn't cover her face quite as much. Like instead of a big hat, maybe it's a small veil or but yeah, she's hair's down.
I in this moment, I think Duke looks around the room, the VIP area. If this is a place of comfort for her, I want to look for anything that resembles the shape that has been missing at every crime scene.
Ooh, it's a box, right? Like
Yes.
Duke has to deduce that much. I mean, the room's full of like archival boxes, but those would be too large.
Yes.
I imagine the piece you're looking for. No, but maybe in this room there might actually be a different kind of record player. If it was at least a clue to him that she may have a taste for music, or maybe you see a small collection of classical vinyl.
I think he just takes that in at this point. If he's not seeing anything that kind of like states that interest, the fascination, he's probably not going to say much about it at this point.
And I imagine the conversation is as awkward and stilted as it is being portrayed in the moment between the two of them. Both of them hunters in their own way, trying to figure out what exactly the other one wants and why the other one is here or why the other one cares. And there's this silence and fake cordiality between the two of you that you continually dance around.
Well, as much as I love a good spat of silence, I can let you back to your cosmopolitan Duke.
Would Vera put any rules down? Don't feed in my club. Like, here's what you got to do if you're going to be here.
Yeah,
it
I
is
think
your
Vera would
domain.
just say, if you are new to the neighborhood, I guess I should welcome you. This club has a single rule for our kind. Look, but do not touch.
The Duke fosters a tilted grin before nodding. Before I leave, Miss Vera, when is your next dance?
I haven't really scheduled my performances, I guess. I do them as I'm in the mood. Unfortunately, I've been a bit busy. She kind of gestures to the messy pile of paperwork.
And as Duke's been standing, chatting, his eyes has certainly gazed over, and he's realized it is a smattering of bills and paperwork and finances, and none of it seems organized whatsoever.
Once you become a businesswoman, you don't get to be an artist anymore.
Art is very important to the person. I understand what that is like.
Oh?
Is it important to you still?
Again, I try to let it be, but when you're as old as I am, some things slowly dwindle away.
Duke brings his hands kind of like up just above like the navel, and he sort of like begins tapping his finger across, his like index across the other finger. When is your next dance outside of the club?
Those jobs are few and far between. I'm usually asked to them.
Duke nods. Thank you, Miss Volkov. You've been more than accommodating to a fresh guest, a new face, and one of our kind in this location. I do appreciate that.
I don't get appreciation very often, but I'm sure you already know that.
None of us really do. Oftentimes our work is overlooked, and sometimes that's nice. If you ever need help with your books, your finances, a place to resolve the numbers, they're fickle little things, but they're honest, and I know my way around them. You can always contact me. I'm looking for more work. At a rate, yes. We all have rates.
And what?
This is the working era.
And what is yours?
I suppose it's something that we can negotiate at the time. It doesn't seem that you're in immediate need, so it's not as pressing.
Well, I thought you were astute. But again, you seem to know a lot about me. So I'm sure you already know, as a financial man, how the club is actually doing.
Surprisingly, Duke, you haven't really spent a lot of time looking into this club. It hasn't been something that you've had to worry nor care about. Its finances, sure, they make enough to stay open, but you haven't really deep dove into them before.
Seems to be well enough. You at least have the patronage of someone who seems to care about this establishment, along with your own well-being.
Duke. Do you have a surname?
Premind.
Duke Premind. I've not seen you around the city before, and I've been here a long time.
I like to keep my head down.
I'd like to say I do the same, but it seems you sniffed me out.
I have a keen sense for these kinds of things. Just one of my talents.
Is Vera feeling extraordinarily
Yes.
suspicious at this point?
Like there's something here he's not
don't have
saying,
to
and
do-
she
you
knows
can
he's
just-
not saying it.
Yeah. You can kick him out.
Duke, I'm going to be honest with you because honestly, I don't have it in me to lie. At least not to you. I've worked very hard to have what little I have. And any other kindred that comes walking through my door asking questions and dropping my name to the bartender usually ends up kicked out the back and gets to meet the rest of my friends. But there's...
Interestingly enough, I didn't know your name before I walked into this establishment. I simply knew of your art.
my art. So you've heard of what? My performances. They make the back pages of the shitty papers in town.
I've seen it, Vera. But that's a conversation for another time. I see that I've rattled your cage, and I promise that is not what I was here to do.
No, Duke, it's not that you've rattled my cage. It's just that in all the years that I've been doing this, nobody's been brave enough to come walking through the door looking for the Black Swan.
As I said, I suppose you piqued my interest.
Well, you're welcome back as long as you follow the rules. But until you want to be completely transparent with me, I guess you can show yourself to the door.
Thank you, Vera. I'd like to come back again and potentially discuss some matters of yours in the future under a pleasant and more welcoming guise, of course. Until then.
Until then.
And as the conversation comes to an awkward close, our vision doesn't follow Duke. It stays in the VIP room with Vera as we watch Duke turn his back, leave the room, and a few minutes later, John enters. John looks to you with slight concern across his face. Anything we should be worried about, Miss Volkov?
I'm not entirely sure yet, John. Do me a favor. Go tell Max there's a gentleman in the neighborhood. I'd like for you to find out where he resides.
As you wish.
Thank you.
And he just nods and walks away. And as Vera walks over back to the sea of paperwork and frustration now on her mind of some kindred walking in and asking questions so blatantly, not to know anything about him at the end, certainly sits uneasy with you. But the night comes to a close, as does the following night and the night after, and many weeks pass by. So much so that the thought of Duke completely leaves Vera's mind. He's never come back, never caused issue, and never seemed to bother you ever again, even after he said he would return. 3 months pass. 4 on an evening, only a few hours into opening. John comes bustling through the back door into the VIP room where Vera at the moment is lighting up her first cigar of the night. As the flame kicks onto the lighter, John holds his hand up. Miss Volkov, I apologize. I realize you're about to relax. But we have company at the front door that is eager to speak with you. And as you look up to him, you don't even have to make a roll. He looks worried.
Well, don't stand on ceremony, John. Bring them in.
And he just kind of bites his tongue and leaves. A few minutes later, through the back door, 2 gentlemen dressed in suits, one with an envelope under his arm and the other one with a beeper strapped to his belt, stride in with sunglasses tucked into their pockets. A woman by like somewhere in her early 30s with her hair up in a tight ponytail, steps forward. You must be Miss Volkov? Vera Volkov, correct? Owner of this establishment?
I am.
She nods and takes a couple steps forward and reaches to shake your hand.
May I ask why you're here? You don't seem dressed for the occasion.
Oh, I apologize. I am not a club goer. The name's Amanda McPherson. I'm actually with the, I'm with the IRS. I don't mean to immediately put stress on you, but if I may, and she gestures to a nearby seat.
It is open.
She smiles and nods. Thank you. And she sits down as she reaches over to her assistant, he's carrying the papers. She reaches forward and pops it, pulls it from his arm, opens up the folder, and kind of slides it on a nearby table. And she starts flipping through some paperwork. This has been an area of concern of ours for some time now. This club has been established since 1999, it seems like. So about 5 years, is that correct?
Yes, it was purchased.
And you've been filing the taxes on your own, it seems. No accountant or anything. All personally done.
Yes, of course, it is my business, and I assure you, well, I imagine you understand what it's like to be a woman in a man's world.
Yeah, she nods. Yeah, it can be frustrating. And it seems here, as far as you're concerned, you have made payments. You have paid taxes, so that's good. It'll definitely lessen the amount you owe at the end of all this.
Oh.
Yes, I apologize. Hold on a moment. Yeah, you can consider this, I guess, an audit, Miss Volkov. It seems that perhaps it's the way you file. I don't wish to make presumptions. However, there's been an issue with each year that you filed taxes. According to our work, you've been filing for much, much less than the club has actually been bringing in.
I'm sorry, are you accusing me of not paying my taxes?
Yeah, I'm gonna need about 5. You said 5 years, 1999. I'm gonna need all of the income statements for your entire club over those 5 years, if possible. That would help make this go a little faster and be less of a problem for you.
Problem for me. I really appreciate you coming down to deliver such important information. But 5 years worth of records will take me some time to pull for you. I imagine you don't need them this evening?
No, not this evening. Do you know how long it might take you?
Well, I imagine at least a couple weeks.
Couple of weeks? Well, you have... Good. I'm glad it'll only take a couple of weeks. We can give you until the end of the month, about 30-day period, to pull all the paperwork we're going to need. And should we find that our research on your business is correct and there is some mistakes on your taxes, which happens, we're going to need to find a way to have you fall into compliance within those 30 days, lest you serve up to 5 years in prison or 500 times the amount that you've paid so far in this club. Payment plans can be arranged, of course, and we can make this all kind of go away as necessary. But if there is evidence of tax evasion or tax fraud, we're going to have an issue on our hands that I want to make sure you and I solve before we have to take it to the courts.
Well, I promise you there is no issue. Please, I assure you I will gather what information that you need.
She nods and kind of scribbles some things on a paperwork. I'm going to give you my phone number should you need to call me, and we can settle this as necessary. If you find the paperwork prior to those 2 weeks, the sooner we can get this filed, the sooner we can find a middle ground solution for you. Just want to make sure all your paperwork's right as rain, and then, we could see the flourishing establishment of your club continue to flourish here in town. We just need to make sure everybody's following by the same rules, And she smiles at you with that very pleasant HR smile.
I sure understand rules.
Well, Miss Volkov, I'll leave you with this. I appreciate your time. Again, the name's Officer Amanda McPherson. She reaches her hand forward.
I imagine there's like a very hesitated moment where Vera's like, if I just kill her now, do you think they'll miss her? And she reaches out and kind of grabs her hand, her long fingernails kind of gripping around this woman's hand. As always, pleasure doing business with you.
Of course, and I hope we can get this figured out sooner rather than later. Come on, George. George quietly just kind of bites his lip and follows her in suit as she strides out the front door.
As they leave, I kind of close the door and I look at John and I simply say, do you know, I spent 80 years dealing with the politics of kindred society, and I'm going to be brought down by kind bureaucracy.
Do you think it'd be worth reaching out to Mr. Allister?
No. I have another idea, maybe. Do you remember the strange gentleman, the one in all the beige?
He thinks for a minute. You've seen many strange gentlemen over the years.
The
Miss Volkov.
one with the cosmopolitan at the bar, the librarian type.
He nods. Yes. Mr. Duke, was it?
Yes, Duke Premind, he called himself.
Sure. Yeah, I remember him.
See if Max figured out his location, and go ask him to drop by the club. He offered his
Max
services.
is out tonight.
Well, then maybe you'll have to make a run across town. I'd like to speak with him.
As you will. I'll take care of it right away. And John just quietly turns around and begins to limp his way out the door.
Vera's like, 5 years worth of paperwork. Not paying my taxes, they say. And she's just like muttering under her breath as she lights the cigar.
About 10 minutes pass before the door opens again to the VIP room, the music flying in before being muffled, and John actually strides in. Miss Volkov. Mr. Premind is outside.
Outside?
He's standing outside waiting for you.
Why do I get the feeling that he knew about this all along?
Your hunches always seem to be correct, Miss Volkov. I don't know.
John, am I not intimidating or scary enough? Most men don't have the balls to walk into my club and try to frame me for tax evasion of all things.
You are a horrifying and domineering presence, Miss Volkov, but I don't
John.
pretend to understand your side of the world.
Well, since he's on our doorstep, I guess you better invite him in. Let's hope he has more to say than last time.
He nods, and as he goes to open the VIP door, standing a foot outside the VIP door is Duke.
Well, Mr. Premind, did you pay off the bouncer this time as well, or did you just invite yourself in?
I tipped as per normal. It's customary. Comforting.
Always.
If you need me, Miss Volkov, you know where to find me. And John quickly hurries out.
And always with the politeness, Duke. Please come in. I'd offer you a seat, but I imagine you won't take it.
Thank you for understanding.
Here's the thing, Duke. I don't understand. I'd tell you that 2 IRS officers just showed up at my door, but I think you know that.
You seem to believe this is some sort of cunning ruse.
Is it not?
Perhaps it is.
So I'll ask you what I asked you a few months ago. What is it that you want?
Confirmation. And understanding. I've been following in your footsteps for a while. I will continue to do so as the Camarilla asks. But it's nice to finally get to see face to face with the person that I've been cleaning up after.
Ah, I see. Yes, I tend to make a little bit of a mess.
I find it very interesting. There is an art to it, discovered many years ago with a woman that is unlike your current target.
Yes, well, my art is to not be seen by anyone. At least that is the point. But for whatever reason, you've had the privilege of doing so. Did I upset you? Kill someone you loved? Why is it that you hold me at such a loose end over such petty, kind bullshit?
I admire your work, Vera. And I needed to be recognized in a way that was petty. Less innocuous, that's not the ways of the typical kindred. It's a small web, but you simply can't ignore me. My only ask is that you continue to utilize me as your cleaner.
Well, this is the strangest job interview I've ever hosted. Most of the time, they take their shirts off and show me their abs.
I'm happy to continue to impress.
Well, since I am in a bit of a pickle, as they say, show me what you can do, Duke Premind. You cleaned up my messes before, and it looks like you're going to help me clean this one up too, since you brought the IRS to my doorstep.
I assure you that they were
Sure that this-
they were looking previously. I only stumbled upon this, and I may have ushered it along, but they would have been here sooner, before later.
Then I'll swallow my pride. Something I imagine you know is very difficult for me to do. And I'm going to say thank you.
Don't thank me yet. Yet. When you walk away from this not owing anything, in fact, discovering that they owe you, then you can thank me. For now, I'll need a new study. Someplace where I can focus. This is a lot more work than not. I'll need to write away all of the funds that you acquire from various places, not just from your clientele.
Well, then we have a lot to speak on. I guess I will bear myself to you, You can have the office. I live upstairs. I'll take to the loft until you're done. Get me out of this Duke Primant. And I'll answer any questions you may have about my art.
Very well. Thank you, Vera.
I have one more question. Vera kind of leans across the desk, cigar still in hand. She peers at you through squinted eyes. You look very familiar. Have I seen you before?
I've just got one of those faces, I've been told.
As Vera raises an eyebrow, there's that silent understanding between the two of them. Duke immediately gets to work on the paperwork that's scattered across the table, organizing it, and getting ready to attack it with his own specialties. The camera pulls back, slides out the front door, gazing at the neon sign of Swan Lake as it flickers to dark. And as the light flickers to dark, so does our screen. And the end of Duke's one shot. Next time you see us, it'll be season 3, everybody.
Yes.
We'll be back soon, everybody. Thank you guys so much for the support over on Patreon. We appreciate it. We're actually going to go do an after show now for patrons. So if you are a patron, look forward to that. If you want to get the after shows, you can still become a patron. Not only get this one, but all the ones that we've already done prior as well. Yep. And then, like I said, we'll be back for season 3 sooner rather than later.
See y'all November
Bye,
5th.
guys.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey, it's Sean. Now, I'm sure you've heard Vera say no phones, but if we're going to break 1 billion followers, then I'm going to need you to do me a little favour. If you could hop onto Twitter and follow us at Pod by Night, that would be mint, and a 5-star review on iTunes ain't going to hurt either. And maybe I'll share some of them spicy DMs with you. Cheers, mate.